Okay, hey, welcome everyone. So in this video I'm going to demonstrate how I handle my templates in Cubase here. Now, templates are kind of a boring thing. I'm going to cover it anyways because there's something to be said about it. It saves you time in the long run. It keeps you well organized. Let's say I had a full job to mix, and instead of getting all my tracks, routing all my tracks, setting up effects channels, group channels, a stereo bus analyzer, etc., etc. I have it all at my fingertips and it just loads it up. And if I don't need anything, I can delete certain things off of the template, or I could just add a few more things, make it more customized as per the certain session that you're working with. So let's dive right in. I have essentially 4 different setups here. I have one that's essentially for recording and mixing. So basically I'm using all audio tracks. Just boom, 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 boom. Just a bunch of stuff. Usually live drums, live bass, live guitar, all that stuff. I have another one for creating electronic music. So on the production side, I have a bunch of VSTs set up, a bunch of FX channels and group channels, and all that stuff is all routed. Then I have another one for mastering. And the fourth one is just a basic empty session. So if I just want to add in, let's say, like just start up Cubase and then add in 1 or 2 tracks just quickly. I don't need any kind of big template. I just want something to start up quickly, which is partly what this empty one does. That comes stock in Cubase, but I want the stereo analyzer. I essentially have four analyzing plugins that I always want on my stereo bus, and then I always want on the mixer certain things set up. So I'm just gonna open it up and show you instead of talking and rambling on. So yeah, here it is. Basically, and I'll get this mixer into the first window here. So I always have these 4 analyzing tools. I got a dynamic range meter. This one's free if you ever want to check it out. It's free on the interwebs. It's called TT Dynamic Range Meter. I got that guy. I got Blue Cat's Frequency Analyzer, which is really sweet. And I have it set up so that the precision is cranked and the speed is cranked, and I have a peak reset. This is how I like to use this plugin. And if you start this plugin from scratch, which I'll just show you real quickly, it's not set to that. The precision is lower, the speed is lower, and there's no peak reset. So every time I would have to load this plugin, not only do I have to load it, but then I have to tweak it just how I kind of am used to and how I like it. So that's why I set this up like this here. And then I have a smexoscope which analyzes the waves of the incoming file versus time, so I can see everything going on. And you can just adjust the time, the amplitude. And then I have a scope tool which gives me the phase relationship and gives me a nice visual representation of that on the 2-bus. Now I also have the control room set up in Cubase. I'm not going to go into detail what possibilities you can use with the control room. I'm not too familiar with this thingamabobber, but it has a nice big meter, and no matter what's running through, like, you could be monitoring through any bus and it'll always be showing up on this meter, which is nice. And then you can select your meters and whatnot, and you have dim selection. You have what else do we got? If you open this up, okay, get away. If you open this up, you can have click volume, etc., etc. So I've gotten used to using the control room now. Before I didn't like it for some reason, and now I like it quite a lot, and I don't know why I wasn't using it this whole time. So yeah, I have this set up, and then I have I like to make mixes sometimes. So I just have this DJ inputs, which is a left and a right on RCAs coming in, and I have this set up. I also have my VSTs set up properly so that whenever I load this up, I'm good to go. And another thing is, if I want to make another template, some kind of big template, this is what I start with. Because now I have all this stuff, all my VSTs are set up properly, and then I can just start adding tracks. So, very cool. I also have all of my basic templates. I have the project setup already done. I have all my info in there. I keep it at 44.1 and 32-bit float and wave, and equal power pan, and +6 max. I have this in all my templates, and if I ever have to change it, then I'll just change it, but this is what I start with. So another thing that I like to do is get rid of this status line. It gives me more room on here. So let's go ahead and save this beast. Empty session, boom. Now, let's close that down. And I'll show you this full band record mix. It'll take a little while to load. But basically I have all my audio tracks lined up. Some stereos, some monos. I have all of that routed into my group tracks, which are, there's a shit ton here. Then I have a whole whack of effects channels, and I put the plugins that I tend to use the most, and I have a basic understanding of what I like to use as far as delays. So I have delays here, ping pong, eighth, slap delay, all here, using a certain plugin for each one of those delays. Then I have a bunch of reverbs. If I want to get rid of them, like I said, just delete it or duplicate a track real quick, and it's kind of already half set up. Easy, quick, good to go. And like I said, I have all my things organized in folders here. So drums. And let's close all these. So I have kick. Sometimes I have 2 kick mics. Maybe I'll only have one, then I just gotta delete one of these. Snare drum, same thing. Or I can always duplicate it, and then everything is routed. So this is already going to my snare group track. I don't have to worry about setting all that extra stuff up. Toms, overheads, cymbals, rooms. So like I said, I have some stereo and some monos. This one right here, this is a stereo audio track. This is a mono. So if I had a drum room mic that's in mono, just slap it on here, delete this. If I have a stereo one, slap it in here, delete this. Or if I have both, there we go. And I am good to go. And then I laid down some extra things that I thought that maybe I'd be using. So we got bass, a DI and an amp, acoustic guitars, rhythm, lead, solo, piano, synth, pad. And the synths and the pads, I have VST instruments. A lot of times when I'm doing clients, I'm not going to be doing this stuff. So I just get rid of these things real quick. But sometimes if I'm doing my own, or on the special occasion, if I'm adding stuff in for a client, then I got these things set up right there. Piano, I also have one of those set up. Vocals, I tend to keep them in mono, and I'll send this signal to whatever kind of effects, which will be in a stereo format. So let's say I was sending it to a doubler, and then it would really widen up the vocals. All of the effects would be in a stereo image, but the main vocal is right down the middle in mono. So I keep that in mono. Sometimes we have different files for the verse and the chorus, so I just put 2. Background vocals, here we go, left and right, if it's a stereo, etc., etc. So I think you get the point here. And then each of these things are routed to the appropriate group track, and that's probably the most time consuming, is getting these set up, the group tracks and the effects tracks, and then routing them. Yeah, and then the effects tracks, I also have a separate group track, and I send all of them to here. And another thing that I want to do and have been doing is stem mastering. So I've sent out something for stem mastering. Typically people will have either 16 channels of analog summing. So you'll create 16 channels of stems from the song. So what I can do here actually is really quite easy. All I would have to do is add sorry, I would just have to add the appropriate group tracks at the end here, and then I can send, I'll give an example. Let's say I'm doing the kick and the snare. I'll add the group tracks here, and those are going to be in mono. So two groups. This is now the kick sum, and I can go in here, get the input from the group 20 right here. So now it's receiving the input from the sum kick, and I would send the kick, instead of going through the monitor outputs, I would go sum kick. So the kick gets sent to the sum kick, and this is getting input from the sum kick, and then I can record the stem, and then I can bounce the file to keep it in one solid track when I've fixed the size and whatnot, and then I send it off to Stem Master. Excuse me, I got a dingle here. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'd be sending these to all of these here. I'd record these stems, and that's what I'm going to be sending off to master. So I always keep that in here. If I'm not doing stem mastering, then I just delete that, and I don't have to worry about extra group tracks and sending these things to a certain bus. So now let's move on to the next template. Delete that. Oh, you know what? I forgot something, but I will show you in this template here. So this one is my electronic music production template. Actually, I forgot to show you two things. So I'll show you two things here once it loads. So first off, on the 2-bus, I also have the Native Instruments SSL style bus compressor, and then the L2, and I have them at I just load a template real quick, and then I bypass it for the time being. And once I'm starting to do levels in my mixing, then I turn on the stereo bus and the limiter, and I'll make sure that I'm not hitting those things too hard. but they're going to be doing just a little bit so that I have an idea of what the mix sounds like when it's going to be mastered, or at least when it's on high volume and has some compression and just a little bit of limiting. So I can put these on and off as I'm going through the mixing. But these are the templates, or I just pick a preset. Those are the presets that I like, so I just set these, forget it, I could turn it on, turn it off as I like. So let's put that back on too. The other thing that I forgot to demonstrate is this top section right here. So what I have, only recently have I kind of noticed you can do this, is this little button right here, divide track list. That separates these type of tracks, which are not audio tracks, not instruments, not effects or groups or folders, etc. It's these little extra ones, the markers, the ruler, the tempo, signature, chord track, arranger, all of that kind of organization stuff. That stuff gets split up. It gets split into two, and I'll kind of demonstrate here. So I'll open up here so that you see everything is scrolling, but these things are staying up here. Everything below is moving up and down. I can scroll. If I click this and unite this together, when I scroll down, all of my other organization track things here are also scrolling up and down. So I lose that stuff. And I want to keep a lot of this stuff at the very top. So let's say I'm doing some editing in, let's say, the bass guitar, and there's some points. I'm putting marker points so that I know where to edit. I don't want to have to scroll up to the marker track, look at it, and then scroll down and start editing. And I also don't want to go into the visibility thing here and start pushing buttons, etc., etc. That's too time consuming. So what I've figured out is you can do this, you divide it, and now when you're scrolling, it's always going to be here. So that's a really handy thing that once I figured that out, that you can do this in Cubase, I've been using it in like every single session. And I'll demonstrate what these are here. So I always have my sessions in bars and beats, and that way I can quantize everything. I can use the snap on the grid and on and off, and that's always going to be on the grid, right? But the other thing is that you have to choose. Either it's going to be the grid, or it's going to be in time signatures, so in seconds. Or not time signatures, in whatever they call it, in seconds. But I wanted to know how long the songs were, but have it in the beat mode. So if you add a ruler track, which is this guy right here, you can select whichever one you want. You can even have samples here. So I like to keep this one on seconds. I have this one right here, which is the main bar, and this is in bars and beats. So I have both of those information on the top, and when I'm scrolling up and down, they're both there. Then I have the tempo. A lot of my sessions, I don't change the tempo, so I can delete it. If I use it, then it's there, and then you can lock it once you have everything figured out, and it won't change on you. I also load up a chord track, especially in this electronic music part, because I can use this chord track to figure out my chords. It's going to play the chords for me, and then it can actually figure out chord progression. And then I can monitor these, like whatever notes I'm putting in this chord track, and I can hear the notes. So I keep that in there. Sometimes I take it out and I'll just delete it. And then, like I said, I have the marker track. And the marker track, I've also figured out something really handy. And when I'm using this transport control, you can see I'm putting markers in here. But what I've really wanted to do, and what I hated to do, okay, I'll start from the beginning here. What I hated to do was always having to readjust these marker points here, these end markers. Essentially, I'd have it so that I can export a song. It's not going to be right flush snap to the grid, and it's going to be like half a second before any of the instruments start, and then once everything decays, I'll have 1 second roughly of silence at the very end of the song. And I'll adjust it and I'll start exporting, but then I'll have to do some extra work, or I'll accidentally slide this thing over, and that'll just kind of make me mad, and I'll have to readjust everything. But what you can do with this marker track is when you have this set, I have a shortcut here that makes this loop, or not a loop, but whatever this is. So anytime you move this or you change the size, all you have to do is double click this and it goes back to the markers here. And that is something that I figured out, and I've been using it all the time now too. I don't know how I went without it for all these years. So yeah, that's this top section. And then for this template, specifically the electronic music, I have it set up so that I have certain things here. So I have VST instruments for all of my samples. I like to use Contact, and with Contact I like to use a certain library. So I have all of these set up here with Contact. I know which ones I'm going to use with Contact, and then I just quickly go into here, find my samples. And then I also have an audio track here so that I can bounce down any of this stuff if it's really good and I want to keep it. And instead of having my session trigger MIDI all throughout like the mixing process and whatnot, I can bounce it down here to an audio track, and then it's there, and it's a little bit more professional, and it keeps the session cleaner. And then once I have that there, I can delete these, because I'm no longer looking for samples or triggering samples. At this point I would have an actual kick sample that's already fully produced or whatever. So there's that. So I do that for all of my samples. Here's the drums, percussion, and then I have some synths, so sub, and I do the same here. Once the bass line is all figured out, I have all my automation, etc., etc. Then I'll record that down into audio format on this track, keep it, and I could delete this once I'm comfortable and I know I'm not going to change it. Or I could just mute it and even unload the instrument, and it'll save me CPU. So that's why I keep these in there. Sometimes I record guitar, sometimes I don't, but those are there. Piano, synth, pad, vocals, background vocals, and then samples. Any extra samples will go on a separate track. And then once again, all the group tracks, it's all routed, all laid out. Effects channels, and once again the stems here for mastering. Now another thing that I do sometimes is I'll use Ableton Live as a slave, and maybe I'll do a video of that coming up here. But you can use Ableton Live as a slave. So if you open up Cubase first and then open up Live, Ableton Live, it'll be a slave, and then you can route all your different audio tracks in Ableton, send those in through Cubase, and then you can record stuff from Ableton into Cubase, The reason why I would do that is because Ableton has a certain way of doing things, and it has a lot of samples, a lot of loops. There's a whole library that I might like. I can flip through all this stuff. Whoa, Jesus. Let's go. Cool. I can drop that down into here. Oops. Go into audio track. Hey, what? There we go. And then I can go back into Cubase and see if it's. So right now it's not synced, but anyways, the point is I can record from Ableton into Cubase, and that way I can get whatever I want from Ableton, even though I'm working in Cubase. So I think that covers that one. Yep. Now let's go to the mastering. The mastering template. And this one's probably the most different out of the big three. So I have on my mixer window my monitors, my final mastered audio track that I'm recording to, my mastering chain which has all the plugins, and then my mix track which has nothing on it. This is what's being sent to the effects channel, which is being processed and then recorded down onto my master track here. And then I'm analyzing on the monitor outs with these 4 plugins, and I have the meter here. Very basic mixer window. And then I have all these standard plugins that I tend to use in my in basically all my masters. Sometimes I'll swap an EQ. I'll go down and do a Waves linear EQ or something. Or maybe I won't have a soft clipper, or maybe change the limiter. But I think you get the point. So yeah. And in this one I've downsized the top. I only need markers and seconds. That's all I need. I don't need let's see, I don't need an arranger track, I don't need a chord track or a tempo track. This is all I need. So yeah, and I've enlarged these tracks so I can see the waveforms better. So yes, I think that does it. So it's kind of long-winded. This is what, half an hour of me just talking about templates, but I just wanted to show you guys all of these different applications essentially. So 4 different things. All 4 are doing very different things. And instead of setting all this crap up every time I'm starting a new session, I just load it up and away I go, and I can start deleting or adding a few things, a few tracks, whatever, and away I go. I don't have to mess around, waste time, and the more energy you spend on trying to organize things, rather than devoting that to actually putting into music time, it just sucks. You should try and snip that down to as little as possible. So that's my tidbits. Do what you want with your templates. Follow a rough guide like this. Put whatever plugins you usually use. Same with the VSTs, and set up your VST connections the way that you normally use. In my case, I've rarely ever changed my actual hardware setup. So whatever I connect here with my Sapphire Pro 40 setup, whatever I have in my VSTs, it pretty much never changes. So yeah, now I'll leave you guys. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. And take care until next time.